It's really important to us that our kids understand that love is love and that healthy relationships come in all shapes and sizes.
We consider the traditional family with the mum and a dad as the norm. It's practically the destruction of the traditional family unit is what is going on in our society.
Parental consent. Parental consent. They're not teaching 4-year-olds how to have sex. They're not teaching 4-year-olds how to be gay. They are teaching 4-year-olds that gay people exist.
What place do religious beliefs have in school? Last week, tensions that have played out for months in Birmingham spilled over to Nottingham.
Why are you filming me?
These protesters object to a policy that becomes compulsory next year. It encourages primary schools in England to teach about LGBT relationships if they're age appropriate, as part of what's called relationships education. This man is banned from protesting at a Birmingham school. Turning up at Nottingham's Fernwood Primary, he told Newsnight term may be over, but the campaigners' plan to spread the message goes on.
Day by day, our support is increasing throughout the country. In Birmingham, we are going to be organising workshops for parents to attend, and so that they know in greater detail as to what the issue is about, what material is being taught, what government policy is, and where this push towards this sexualising of young children is coming from.
On Monday, our protest will start at 9 a.m.
This long-running saga is now a key issue in the in-tray of the new Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, who voted against same-sex marriage in 2014. One of the schools at the centre of the Birmingham protests has a temporary injunction in place banning these kinds of demos outside it. Birmingham City Council will try to make that permanent in court in October.
I want the DfE and Boris Johnson to make it very clear to the British public who's in charge. Is it British law? Is it the British government and the British Prime Minister? Or is it a group of people standing outside a primary school saying, you can't tell my kid it's all right to be gay? So who is it? Who is in charge of that? Because the Public Sector Equality Duty in the Equality Act 2010 is very clear. I'm a public sector worker, so is Boris, so is Gavin. We all have a duty to eliminate discrimination and tackle prejudice.
Newsnight has been made aware of a video doing the rounds on WhatsApp groups amongst some of those objecting to primary schools teaching about same-sex relationships. We can't verify its origins. The video claims children are being taught about anal sex.
That's not true.
And talks of a campaign against Muslims. Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson has reported it to the police and to the anti-terrorism initiative Prevent.
I think it's a police matter because it's clearly homophobic. It incites hatred towards gay people. I think it's inflammatory towards me. It says, I invited gay people into school. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just a ridiculous thing to say. And the bit about anal sex, we don't teach children about any sex at our primary school, heterosexual, any kind of sex. And they know that's not true.
Protest organisers say their demonstrations aren't anti-LGBT in any way.
We've been very adamant on this point within our campaign and amongst our supporters that we will not accept homophobic behaviour, homophobic comments or anything abusive against the LGBT community, because it is we must offer respect and tolerance towards them.
Newsnight understands other items have also been referred to Prevent and the police in this ongoing row. Sarah Hewitt-Clarkson passed on anti-Muslim material sent to her school, which she said had far-right tones. It's being investigated. We've also learnt that the National Association of Head Teachers sent a dossier of issues raised by its members to the Department for Education's Counter-Extremism Division. A Prevent officer told us, while the RSE protests themselves are not a concern for Prevent, we are aware that the issue is being exploited by extremist groups. We believe both Islamist and far-right activists are using the protests to foster division between communities. Aside from any potential extremism concerns, it's small numbers of Britain's conservative Muslim community who have been most visibly at the forefront of the campaign. But some members of other faiths also object to the policy. Newsnight has spoken to the head of a London primary school. She asked to remain anonymous to prevent the kind of backlash seen in Birmingham. It's her first interview on the subject.
Mine is a lot of Christian families. They're extreme Christianity and they quote verses from the Bible, etc. I've had some Muslim. It's a mixture, really. We basically teach that love is love. We talk about relationships. We talk about some people have 2 mums, some have 2 dads. Then they say I'm sexualizing children. I'm indoctrinating them to be gay. I'm worried about my own personal safety. I'm worried about my staff, but mostly I'm worried about the children. I've seen a change in behaviour of particular children being homophobic in their comments towards others in the playground.
At the moment, parents have the right to remove their children from these classes. Have you had children pulled out of these lessons in your school?
Yes, a significant amount compared to last year. Last year we only had a handful. This year we have a significant amount, over 100.
This head teacher said she'd been cheered by the reaction of some parents last week in Nottingham. Newsnight has learnt that letters withdrawing children from relationship and sex education classes have been sent to this primary school too by some parents. Forewarned their school would be targeted in the row, others decided the best response was to bring a little colour back into a debate that's often appeared black and white.
Well, we asked the Department for Education to come on to tonight's show. No one was available. They told us relationships, sex and health education are vital to ensure children grow up healthily, happy and safe. Every school will have the support they need to deliver these subjects to a high standard. I'm joined now by Jess Phillips, the Labour MP for Birmingham Yardley, where the Anton Park School is. Does that reassure you, Jess, that every school will have the support they need to deliver these subjects?
If it were true, it would reassure me, but I'm afraid to say, has up to this point not been the case. The schools in Birmingham where much of these protests have focused to date were left, I have to say, by the Department for Education high and dry in this circumstance. It has been handled incredibly poorly by the Department for Education and the ministers involved, in my opinion, because they simply do not understand the issue.
You've now got 100 kids, though, according to this one head teacher, who aren't even attending lessons anymore. How do you get them back?
Well, the reality is that we have got to nip this in the bud. The law that we have brought in is still in the regulation too unclear, and the Department for Education just needs to say that every school has to teach about every aspect of the Equality Act. It is as simple as that. While we allow for some schools to do it and some schools not to do it based on what the head teacher thinks, we are going to continue to breed this disharmony. The law needs to be much clearer, the regulation needs to be much clearer, and this will go away.
Isn't the truth, though, that the legislation just moved too quickly for some parents, too quickly for some communities? You all appreciate that the law is not always or necessarily in step with how some people genuinely feel?
Well, that is, I'm afraid to say, unfortunate. There's lots of laws that change in this country that I absolutely do not agree with. And as we have our new Prime Minister, there'll be plenty of laws that are coming onto the books that I, as a parent, don't feel in step with. But I will just have to put up with it, won't I? And I won't be taking my children out of school because I don't like some of the things that the government does. This is about being part of a society. We live in a democratic society. We respect the laws of this country.
But you want to bring people with you. I mean, at the moment, you've got, as I say, in one school, 100 kids that are on the outside. How do you find, I mean, do you think you need to search for compromise at all rather than just beat them over the head with, you know, the blunt stick of legislation?
But the truth of the matter is that it's not even the blunt stick of legislation that has done this. Many of the schools, including the schools that have been targeted, have been undertaking these lessons exactly as they do now for many years, and nobody was taking their children out of school. It is nothing to do with the legislation. It is to do with a propaganda war of lies and complete and utter misrepresentation of what is happening, as you had in your film, stuff about anal sex, stuff about sex full stop. This is just about different people with different families. This has not happened because of the change in legislation. The change in legislation is the excuse. This has happened because of a mixture of very far-right, radical and very hard-line religious people have started a campaign, and the Department for Education is allowing that campaign to go on by being lily-livered.
Well, you heard some talk in that film of teachers passing on material, threats, letters that they'd received to the counter-extremism programme. What do you think should happen there?
I mean, what really worries me about this whole situation is that I think the Department for Education, in some of its actions, have tried to sort of make it go away by stopping this in order to stop tensions. And in fact, what they have done is inflamed tensions with their actions. And they have both far right against Islam and Muslim community, but also towards the LGBT community from some of the more fundamental religious groups. Now, neither of those things needed to happen. And actually, this is a problem that could have been solved.
Jess Phillips, thank you. Thank you very much.